Good evening, YouTube. Tire Metalhead Weatherman. Hopefully, you guys are doing well today. Hopefully, you guys have had a good Wednesday. So pretty much going to be jumping right into this one here, as we've been doing in a lot of videos recently. But business has picked up in a big way pretty quickly. Right now, things are still quiet, but check what's happening out here right now. Here's our storm system right here. Storms are starting to fire, and guess what's just been issued not too long ago? 52 minutes ago, in fact. Slight risk for overnight tonight. That's something actually, I kind of called it, but I wasn't sure of where it was going to be. I thought, if anything, it would have been a little further to the south, but clearly a lot has changed here. The dynamics with this low pressure have really started to come into play, especially closer towards that closed low, because there's quite a collision in temperatures, which we'll highlight in just a minute. But we now have a slight risk for tonight's severe weather, and then we also have to still keep an eye on tomorrow's slight risk. And interestingly enough, this is a different type of slight risk setup. This is one I actually haven't even gone over on my Weather Nerd 101 playlist. You want to watch any of the videos on there, link will be in the top right, and this will kind of help you with in the event of a severe weather outbreak or tornadic event of any kind, you'd be able to at least be able to depict what's going on in the Doppler. But back to what we're talking about here. Our slight risk is actually generated mostly by a tornado, and guess what? A hail threat. The wind threat's actually the lowest part. Actually has the lowest percentage here. It's only a marginal risk technically. This could change, of course, but the dynamics near the low pressure, and that's an area where we have the most lift and the most spin, is now deemed sufficient enough to produce a couple of quick spin ups and some moderately severe hail, maybe above 1 inch in diameter, I'd say, tonight. And then, of course, when we look towards tomorrow's threat, more widespread, a little further to the south, and that much hasn't really changed. We're looking at the entire state of Kentucky being in a marginal risk now. Pretty much almost all of Tennessee, large portion of North and South Carolina too. And of course, we have to watch the Gulf Coast as well. I was about to say golf course. Jeez. But, of course, tornado threat right now still sitting at a 2% over this region. We're going to have to watch and see what happens, particularly around here. Maybe even further south of Atlanta. I'm a little bit suspicious of this area being a point of greater interest, given the Cape value and the low-level jet. And we'll go over all of that in a minute. But mainly this is going to be dominated by a wind threat. Hail threat doesn't really seem to exist here. They're not saying that it can't happen, but the likelihood of it is a lot less, as this storm system's low pressure will be moving further off to the north, and the cold temperatures are going to be lagging so far behind that there won't be a lot of convection in higher levels with lapse rates to produce hail. But over here tonight, where the low pressure is going to be here and the warm air is going to be here, in other words, this will allow for multiple modes of severe weather tonight. Although I do think it will be in a much more isolated pocket than what we will be seeing tomorrow. Let's go ahead and start depicting some of that, shall we? So this is what we have going on right here, right now. And you can see these storms starting to fire, pretty much identical to what's being shown on the National Weather Service radar right now. These storms have started to fire towards northwestern Arkansas, and these are going to work their way northeast and build further. And you can kind of see how that low pressure being over towards Kansas is affecting it. You can kind of see a little bit of that counterclockwise spin with this little system as we roll this forward. You can see it starts out pretty linear, but it has that little curl right here, especially towards the top, like this little comma shape. This is going to be one area that we have to watch, particularly for the development of a couple quick spin ups. So pretty much around this region we're watching here, and then we can watch this as it progresses further to the east, especially over here, because it looks like you have the potential of an embedded supercell here towards southeastern Missouri here, maybe towards southern Illinois here. So keep your eyes open. This is going to be a very tricky little MCS that pops up overnight and could produce a couple of tornadoes. This will most likely be a little bit more than a couple of booms of thunder, it looks like here. Let's hope that that's not the case, but we have to watch these little sectors right here because this is where we can get inflow and a couple of areas of rotation leading to more spin-ups. And then as we go forward throughout the day, this cold core sector will start to diminish in nature, I think. This is actually going to be a snow band right here, so don't worry about this. This isn't being highlighted as a snow band because I'm just looking at composite reflectivity. It's not based on precip type. But we'll watch these little line segments continue to move through the state of Kentucky. There is a marginal risk for severe here, but by this point, the dynamics will start to diminish as the day goes on. By the time we get to the afternoon, it's going to be it's going to be mainly sitting around the 50s. The wind shear threat is going to mainly stay a little further to the west, and we may have to watch for maybe a damaging windstorm or two. But for the most part, heavy rain looks like the main concern with this system. You could get a little bit of heavy rain on the backside too, but this should be pretty minimal. Then as we get towards Friday, of course, we'll have to watch for the snow threat. Now we'll shift this further to the south and we'll see how things progress there. Now for the southeast, the timing is going to be a little different. Southeast, these storms are really going to start to pick up in intensity as we get into the mid-morning hours into the early afternoon. These storms are going to generally be fueled by the Gulf of Mexico, but the moisture here is going to be a little bit more abundant, and we're also going to have a lot warmer temperatures, so this could be a longer lasting severe event. But these storms should be moving pretty quickly, I think. So we get the same kind of thing as what's going on further off to the north and west here. Get these little line segments, and there is potential for an embedded spin up here and there. You can kind of see these little curvatures here and there, almost like these little notches. That's what we're going to have to be watching throughout the day for the threat of a tornado, although the tornado threat is actually less on tomorrow than it is tonight. So we'll watch this go forward here. This really starts to develop more so into a really organized line of thunderstorms. It's pretty impressive squall line, MCS type deal. And we'll watch this roll through Alabama and Georgia into the early afternoon and then into the evening hours. But once I'd say we get to about, 8 o'clock or later, that's when these storms will eventually be on their way out. They're going to lose a lot of steam by this point as well. And then probably by Friday morning, we're going to be out. We're going to have them completely cleared out. A couple of showers and thunderstorms may remain, but this is just based off the HRRR for the most part. And then we'll have to watch for maybe a couple of pockets of isolated snow once we get into the early part of the weekend, which I don't expect to really amount into much of anything. So let's go ahead and take a look at the temperature contrast in these two areas. We'll start out with the Ohio Valley because that's a really big talking point here behind this event, and then we'll go back to the southeast and just go from there. All right, so here we are, and we can see where our frontal system is. It's going to be just on the far left corner of the screen here, but we'll watch this progress forward as we get into the overnight hours. This warm nose isn't very impressive over this region, but right about where that slight risk area, which is right about here, we can see temperatures in the low 60s, but look how far that cold air is back, or not how close it is, I should say. Right here, we're seeing temperatures right at 32 degrees. This is right at freezing, not too far behind where this warm nose starts to develop here. And it's around here where we can see that clash of air masses develop here and create severe storm potential. And with us being a lot closer to that low than what we would be towards the southeast per se, this would lead to a little bit greater chance of some tornadic activity. Definitely leads to hail because you need that warm and cold air interaction in order to create those lapse rates for hail. So around here, it's a very interesting development, very interesting dynamic that's developed over this region. And this will linger all throughout the morning and then into the afternoon. Over towards eastern and maybe even north, maybe even southeastern Kentucky into Tennessee. We get some pretty warm temperatures. We're getting close to the 70s here. So mostly, like I said, lend itself towards a damaging wind threat. But look how quick this cold air also comes in behind it. These storms are going to be right on the front here. So once we get through the main event with these storms, that big line, that's pretty much it. So it looks like it's just going to be one round of big storms, and then after that, you might have a couple of scattered showers. But usually with stuff like this, you won't expect a lot to come in afterwards. But look at that cold air that's coming in. I'll talk more about that in the weekend forecast for Friday. But we just got to get through the severe weather for right now. So when we take a look over towards the southeast per se, temps are a lot warmer, even though this is moving in a crazy way. Temps are a lot warmer. We're getting into the 70s in a lot more places. But, like I said, with us being a little further away from that low, the dynamics, like the upper level forcing, the lift, not going to be quite as abundant. So the threat for severe is mainly going to be more predominantly damaging wind, where you could see a marginal threat of anything further up to the north. So we'll see that line of storms come through, and you'll watch the temperatures quickly drop right behind that. See, right towards 8 o'clock, line's a little bit further out ahead of the cold front, but you can quickly see that we're getting quite the change in temperatures once we get into the early morning hours. And then, really, Friday is going to be a pretty cool day. A lot of places may not even get above 50 towards the southeast. Some places may even stay below freezing the further north you go, so towards areas like Tennessee. Alabama, a lot of places, especially towards northern Alabama, are going to be struggling to get above 40. So that being said, let's go ahead and now take a look at the low-level jet, because this is a key factor to a lot of things here. I'm going to switch back over to the Ohio Valley yet again. So here's the Ohio Valley here. We're watching this little spike in this little streak in the jet stream start to really pick up towards the overnight hours here. And this is right around that area where we were talking about there being a greater risk for severe and maybe even a couple of spin ups. We get to that point where we're getting to that 50 knot area, that 50 knot region. Once we get in towards the 50 knot region, that kind of territory, tornado threat does tend to go up just a little bit. Like I said, the lack of cape and just the strength of this system isn't really impressive enough to cause a massive outbreak. The dynamics just aren't there for that. But it's still, nocturnal tornadoes are usually the deadliest. And it doesn't take a strong tornado to do that either. So if you're in these regions, definitely be on guard tonight. I know this was not really talked about by your local news, and it's no fault of theirs. This was a hard to read type of system. These cold core systems are extremely difficult to track, and you don't always see until about maybe the last second that they could potentially pulse up some severe storms with tornadic potential. So if you're in these areas and you're happening to see this, don't fault your local news network. But that being said, we look further towards the south and east as we get later into the day. And that 50 knot region is there as well. So there is a marginal tornado threat with that. And it actually diminishes for a little bit later into the day, especially as we get towards the afternoon and into the evening hours. There is a spot where we could see a little bit of a reemergence developing over the Carolinas. But beyond that, I think for the most part, the instability will start to fade with this. Not like there's a lot of cape to really go around to begin with. And then after that, severe threat's over. Could be windy a little bit after, especially dealing with the cold wind from the north as we head into Friday. But that will be of little concern unless you are working outside like I will be. So last thing to look at is reaffirming the Cape, and then we'll take a whole picture over this part of the country here as time goes on. Just highlighting what pretty much will be your Friday forecast too in reality. But first off, we're going to take a look at our mix layer and go from that point. So one thing that I've observed here as well as we've taken a look at the Cape is that the Cape is in greater abundance in this setup versus some of the other models that I've seen as well. Not to mention, further to the south, the Cape isn't as impressive. But we're getting towards that 1500 joules per kilogram mark. So this definitely looks like it has some potential here to be a dangerous night. We can hope that's not the case, but I'm definitely not ruling out anything nocturnal tonight. So if by some chance you have a weather radio, make sure that it's charged, make sure it's ready to go tonight if you're in these regions here, because you can definitely get a pop-up severe storm with potential to cause a lot of ruckus. And then as we go on throughout the day, look at how the Cape starts to dwindle the further into the day we get. See, there's not a whole lot to go around. There's a couple of spots where we start to push a little closer towards 1500 joules per kilogram, especially towards southern Alabama. And maybe towards southern Georgia, we have to watch that area. That's always been an area I've been looking at with this storm system pretty much from the moment I picked it up. So pretty much in areas around Macon, maybe to the south towards Columbus, I'd be watching this a little bit more closely as well. And then as we go on, the Cape values really start to diminish, and by that point we're done with the system. So that's pretty much how the severe weather threat looks like it's going to be playing out here. Of course, we can run through the rest of the model. There's not going to be any Cape to work with, but let's just go ahead and take a holistic picture here and take a look at the precip type and everything. Alright, so let's take the whole picture here. Okay, if we can get this to work. Okay, there we go. So here's our little short mesoscale here with a little bit higher tornado potential. Still not a guarantee whether or not this does produce or not, but I think the chances of this producing are far better than what we have tomorrow. But we'll have to see how this ends up unfolding here. So this is heading into about 7 a.m. Line of storm starts to form towards Mississippi, and then we work our way into Alabama once we get towards noon. We're looking at Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, Montgomery, a lot of you guys being affected by that. And then as we get into the late afternoon, we start to look at Atlanta getting involved in the action here. By this point, Tennessee, you're still dealing with a few showers and storms, but the worst of your severe threat's over. Here's an interesting look, though, as well. When we look at this 540 line here, this is a freezing line, and we see a little bit of showers and storms hanging right next to that. We'll have to watch that very closely because there could be a couple bursts of snow here and there in this region right here towards western Tennessee. Main line comes through Atlanta by this point now, and it's about 7 o'clock. We're starting to look at North Carolina and South Carolina. Columbia, you're staring down these storms. Charlotte, you'll be looking at these storms rolling in within the next hour or two after that. And then we'll watch these storms start to clear out, and then the Appalachians look like they'll start to get busy with snow at that point. And then isolated snow showers could be running through areas like Kentucky and central Tennessee by about mid to late morning on Friday. We have to see what happens with areas a little further south, but we can't rule out a couple of flurries flying around for us over here as well. So, interesting Friday up ahead. Interesting night up ahead, really, too. Keep your eye on the weather tonight if you happen to be towards the boot of Missouri, northeastern Arkansas, western Tennessee, and parts of western Kentucky, also southern Illinois. We can't forget you guys either. And then, of course, the southeast tomorrow. We'll have to watch this. Tornado threat isn't quite zero. The main threat's damaging winds, but we still can't rule out a couple of spin-ups. The dynamics are there, but just not in abundance, not compared to what we see up here. But that being said, if you liked anything I did in the video, of course, drop me a like. Appreciate it. Share this video to people that are in these areas, that are in the potentially affected areas. And if you haven't subscribed already, definitely do so. I see that over 85% of you aren't subscribed to my videos, which is insane. Like, if you guys are enjoying the content, definitely sub. Because we just hit 200. I'd love to hit 300 before the 1 year anniversary of the channel. But enough rambling for me. I got to get ready to go to bed so I can go to work tomorrow. And then I got other videos to edit for my other YouTube channel, which is at the end of this video screen. If you made it this far, you can check that out too. But this has been Ty, Metalhead Weatherman. I will see you guys in the next one. You guys take care. Have a good night and stay safe.